The credit monitoring alert hit my phone at 0347 hours while I was pulling guard duty at the perimeter fence. I'm Captain Knox Thorne, 32 years old, Army Infantry, currently stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky on my third rotation. The notification should have been routine. Credit score update. Monthly summary. Nothing that couldn't wait until morning chow. But the number made my blood freeze. 7 new accounts opened in the past 60 days. Total credit exposure. $847,000. I stared at the screen in the dim glow of the guard tower. The base was quiet except for the distant hum of generators and the occasional radio chatter from the command post. My hands stayed steady, but something cold settled in my chest. I hadn't opened any new accounts. The app showed details that made no sense. Auto loans from 3 different dealerships in Tennessee. A boat financing agreement from a marina in Nashville. Equipment financing for construction machinery I'd never seen. Each application listed my social security number, my military ID, and my current status. But there was something else. Something that made the hair on my neck stand up. Every single application showed a cosigner. Same name on all of them. Staff Sergeant Marcus Delacroix. Delacroix had been my squad leader 2 years ago. Good soldier. Solid reputation. We'd served together for 18 months before he transferred to a logistics unit back stateside. I trusted him with my life more than once during our time in sector. The applications showed addresses I'd never lived at, phone numbers that weren't mine, employment verification from companies that didn't exist. But the signatures looked real. The documentation was thorough. Professional. I scrolled through each entry, my thumb moving mechanically across the screen. The timestamps showed the accounts had been opened while I was in the field, completely cut off from civilian communications. No way I could have signed anything. No way I could have even known these applications existed. The guard rotation change was still 40 minutes out. I had time to dig deeper. I opened my banking app and checked my credit report directly. The hard inquiries were all there. Dozens of them. Each one a small ding against my credit score. But together they painted a picture of someone living far beyond their means. Someone making major purchases while deployed overseas. Someone who wasn't me. The boat loan was the biggest red flag. $340,000 for a yacht I'd never seen. Financed through a marina in Nashville where I'd never set foot. The application showed my military pay as collateral, my allowances as additional income, and my veterans' benefits as backup payment sources. But it was the cosigner information that made everything click into place. Delacroix hadn't just signed as a reference, he'd signed as a joint applicant. Equal responsibility. Equal access. Equal ownership of everything being financed. My phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number. Payment due on the Ranger boat. Marina called twice. Handle it. The message had been sent to my personal cell phone. The number that only family and close military contacts had access to. The number I'd given Delacroix during our 4 emergency contact purposes. I checked the timestamp. The text had been sent 3 hours ago, while I was in briefing. But the marina would have been closed at that hour. No one would have been calling about payments at midnight. Unless someone was trying to create a paper trail. My radio crackled with routine position reports from other guard posts. Everything normal. Everything secure. But sitting in that tower with my phone screen glowing in the darkness, I felt like I was staring into an abyss that had been carefully constructed around me. Someone had been using my identity for months. Someone with access to my personal information, my military records, and my schedule. Someone who knew exactly when I'd be unreachable and unable to monitor my credit. Someone I'd trusted completely. The next guard rotation was walking across the compound toward my position, their silhouettes barely visible in the pre-dawn darkness. In 20 minutes, I'd be off duty and back in my quarters. I'd have access to my laptop, my secure communications, and the tools I needed to figure out exactly how deep this went. But as I watched those figures approach, one thought kept echoing in my head. If Delacroix could do this to me, how many others had he done? It too? The guard rotation arrived exactly on schedule. I handed over the radio and sector map without saying a word about what I'd discovered. Some investigations require silence until you understand the full scope. Back in my quarters, I powered up my laptop and opened every financial monitoring app I had installed. The credit monitoring service showed alerts dating back 4 months. Each one had been dismissed as resolved in the system, but I'd never seen them. Someone had been intercepting my notifications. I pulled up my records. 4 months ago, we'd been running extended operations in the eastern sector. Limited communication windows. Perfect timing for someone who needed uninterrupted access to commit fraud. Delacroix had been my squad leader then. He'd handled our communication schedules, our mail distribution, and our emergency contact protocols. He'd also been the one who suggested I set up automatic bill payments before to avoid any financial complications while overseas. "Smart thinking, Thorne," he'd said. "Last thing you need is credit problems while you're serving your country." I'd trusted him completely. We all had. Marcus Delacroix had been with the unit for 6 years. Decorated sergeant with 2 previous deployments. He'd mentored half the younger soldiers in our company and had a reputation for looking out for his people. When he'd offered to help me organize my finances before, it had seemed like typical Delacroix leadership. Now I realized it had been reconnaissance. I opened my banking app and started tracing transactions. The boat financing was just the beginning. There were applications for motorcycle loans, ATV purchases, and something called recreational vehicle financing that I'd never heard of. Each application listed my military income, my pay, and my veterans benefits as collateral. Each one had been approved based on my credit score and military service record. And each one had Delacroix listed as either a co-signer or joint applicant. The total amount was staggering. Over $80,000 in fraudulent financing, all secured against my military pay and future benefits. My phone buzzed with another text from the same unknown number. "RV payment overdue. Dealer wants to repo. Fix this now." I screenshot the message and checked the metadata. The text had originated from a number with a Louisiana area code. Delacroix was from Baton Rouge. I needed help, but I couldn't involve anyone from my unit until I understood how extensive this was. If Delacroix had been doing this to multiple soldiers, there might be others involved. I called the one person I trusted completely outside my immediate chain of command. "Ramirez. It's Thorne. I need a favor. Off the books." Staff Sergeant Elena Ramirez had been my roommate during advanced training at Fort Benning. She was currently stationed at Fort Bragg working in military intelligence. If anyone could help me trace this without triggering official channels, it was her. What kind of favor? Identity theft, financial fraud, possibly involving someone in my unit. The line went quiet for several seconds. How bad? 80,000 and counting. Someone's been using my military credentials to secure financing while I've been deployed. Jesus, Knox, you need to report this immediately. I will, but I need to know how deep it goes first. If this is happening to other soldiers, I want to catch everyone involved. Send me what you have. I'll run it through our fraud detection systems quietly. Give me 6 hours. I transmitted everything I'd found through encrypted military channels. The financing applications, the text messages, the timeline of when each fraud had occurred. Then I waited. The next 6 hours felt like the longest of my. I went through the motions of my regular duties, but my mind was completely focused on what Ramirez might find. At 1,400 hours, my secure phone buzzed with an incoming call. "Thorne, you need to sit down for this." "I'm listening." "Your sergeant isn't just stealing from you. I found similar patterns involving 4 other soldiers from your unit, all deployed. All with Delacroix listed as emergency contact or financial reference." My stomach dropped. "How much total?" "Over $300,000. Boats, motorcycles, RVs, even a small aircraft. All financed using military pay as collateral. All with soldiers who are currently overseas and can't monitor their credit. Any others outside our unit?" That's where it gets interesting. I found connections to soldiers at 3 other bases: Fort Hood, Fort Stewart, and Camp Pendleton. Same pattern, same methods. This isn't just one guy stealing from his squad. This is organized. I stared at my laptop screen, watching new fraudulent charges appear in real time. Someone was still actively using my information. "Ramirez, I need you to contact Agent Wilson at Customs Enforcement. Tell him we have a multi-base military fraud operation that needs immediate federal attention." Already done. He's flying out tomorrow to coordinate with base security. But Knox, you need to be careful. If Delacroix realizes you're investigating, he might try to cover his tracks. What do you mean? Some of these financing agreements have clauses that make the co-signers responsible for immediate full payment if fraud is suspected. If he triggers those clauses, you and the other victims could be on the hook for hundreds of thousands in immediate debt. I closed my laptop and checked my watch. Delacroix would be finishing his shift in the motor pool in 20 minutes. He'd be heading to the mess hall for dinner, same as always. For the first time since this started, I was going to have to look him in the eye and pretend everything was normal. But now I knew exactly what I was dealing with, and exactly how many people he'd betrayed. The question was whether he knew that I knew. The mess hall buzzed with the usual dinner crowd. I spotted Delacroix at his regular table, laughing with two privates from maintenance. Same easy smile. Same confident posture. Same man who'd been systematically destroying lives for months. I grabbed a tray and moved through the line, keeping my expression neutral. Military training kicked in. Observe. Assess. Control the situation. Knox. Delacroix waved me over. Grab a seat. Martinez here was just telling us about his leave plans. I sat across from him, studying his face for any sign of nervousness. Nothing. He looked genuinely pleased to see me. How's the treating you? He asked, cutting into his meatloaf. Can't complain? You? Same old routine. Motor pool keeps me busy. He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. Hey, you ever get those banking issues sorted out? You mentioned something about weird charges last week. The question hit like a physical blow. He was fishing, testing to see how much I knew. Yeah, all cleared up. Just a glitch in the system. Good to hear. These overseas deployments can mess with automatic payments sometimes. I nodded and forced myself to eat. Every bite tasted like cardboard. My phone buzzed. Text from Ramirez. Wilson landed. Meeting at 08:00 tomorrow. Base Commander's office. Delacroix glanced at my phone. Everything okay? Just family stuff. After dinner, I walked back to my quarters, mind racing. Tomorrow would bring federal agents and formal investigations. Tonight was my last chance to gather without tipping him off. I called the financial institution's fraud hotline again, this time armed with specific questions. I need to know about co-signer notifications. When someone lists me as a reference, do I get alerts? Not automatically, sir. Co-signers typically receive documents by mail or email, but if the applicant provides alternate contact information, notifications go there instead. What if the co-signer is deployed overseas? The applicant would need to provide APO addresses or emergency contacts for document delivery. The pieces clicked. Delacroix had been intercepting all the paperwork. He'd listed himself as my emergency contact, routing everything through his address. I'd never seen a single document because I was never supposed to see them. Can you tell me what address is listed for document delivery on my accounts? She read off Delacroix's off-base apartment address. And the emergency contact? Marcus Delacroix, listed as your financial power of attorney. I hung up and immediately called my bank's legal department. I need to report identity theft and fraudulent power of attorney documents. Sir, our records show you signed those documents in person at our Fort Campbell branch on March 15th. I was deployed to Afghanistan on March 15th. I have military travel orders to prove it. Silence on the other. Sir, I'm going to transfer you to our fraud investigation unit immediately. The next morning, Agent Wilson looked exactly like I'd expected. Mid-40s. Gray suit. The kind of calm intensity that comes from years of financial crimes investigation. Captain Thorne, I've reviewed the preliminary. This is bigger than we initially thought. Base Commander Colonel Hayes sat behind his desk, expression grim. How big? We've identified fraudulent financing applications across 7 military installations. Total exposure exceeds $800,000. 17 service members affected, all currently deployed. Wilson opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Sergeant Delacroix has been operating this scheme for at least 18 months. He uses his position to access personnel files, schedules, and emergency contact information. Then he applies for high-value financing using deployed soldiers as co-signers. How does he forge the signatures? I asked. He doesn't need to. The financing companies accept digital applications with military ID verification. Delacroix has access to ID numbers, social security information, and pay records through his administrative duties. Colonel Hayes leaned. What's our next step? We need Sergeant Delacroix to incriminate himself on record. Captain Thorne, would you be willing to wear a wire during a confrontation? I nodded without hesitation. The plan is simple. You'll approach him about suspicious activity on your accounts. Let him try to explain or deflect. If he admits to any involvement, we'll have grounds for immediate arrest. 2 hours later, I was fitted with a recording device and walking toward the motor pool. Wilson and 2 base security officers waited in an unmarked vehicle 50 yards away. Delacroix was alone in the maintenance bay, working under the hood of a Humvee. Marcus, we need to talk. He looked up, wrench in hand. What's up? I got a call from my bank yesterday. Seems there's some confusion about financing applications I never submitted. His expression didn't change, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. That's weird. What kind of applications? Boat loan, motorcycle financing, RV purchase. All with my name as cosigner. All approved while I was deployed. He set down the wrench and wiped his hands on a rag. Identity theft is getting crazy these days. Probably someone got hold of your information online. That's what I thought. But here's the strange part. The emergency contact on all these accounts is you. Now I saw it. The flash of panic he couldn't quite hide. Me? That doesn't make sense. The bank has your address listed for document delivery, your phone number for notifications. Even has you listed as my financial power of attorney. Delacroix was quiet for a long moment, thinking. I could almost see him calculating his options. Knox, I can explain this. I'm listening. You remember when you deployed? You asked me to handle some of your financial stuff while you were gone. Pay bills, monitor accounts, that kind of thing. I never asked you to do that. You were stressed about leaving. Maybe you don't remember clearly. I stepped closer. Marcus, I need you to be straight with me. Did you use my information to apply for financing? Another long pause. Then, look, it's not what you think. I was helping you build credit. These were legitimate investments that would benefit both of us when you got back. Without my knowledge or consent? I was going to tell you when you returned. The plan was to have everything paid off by then. You would have seen the improved credit score and thanked me. What about the other soldiers? Rodriguez, Chen, Williams? Were you helping build their credit too? His face went pale. How do you know about them? Because I investigated. Because federal agents are involved now. Because you've stolen from 17 different people. Delacroix looked around the empty motor pool, probably considering whether to run. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I just needed some quick cash for my mom's medical bills. The plan was to pay everything back before anyone noticed. $800,000 in medical bills? It got complicated. One loan led to another. I kept thinking I could fix it before anyone found out. By stealing from more soldiers? By making smart investments. I bought assets that were supposed to appreciate. The boat, the RV, the motorcycle. I was going to sell them for profit and pay everyone back. I shook my head. Marcus, you destroy people's credit. You put them on the hook for debt they never agreed to. I know it's messed up, but I can fix this. Give me time, and I'll make it right. Time's up. Agent Wilson and the security officers entered the motor pool. Delacroix's shoulders sagged as he realized what was happening. Marcus Delacroix, you're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes against federal personnel. The handcuffs clicked into place. As they led him away, he looked back at me. Knox, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I watched them put him in the security vehicle and drive away. 3 weeks later, I testified at his court-martial. The Kanaha was overwhelming. 17 victims. $800,000 in fraudulent debt. 18 months of systematic theft. Delacroix pled guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to 5 years in military prison and ordered to pay full restitution to all victims. The financial institutions agreed to remove all fraudulent accounts from our credit reports. The assets he'd purchased were seized and sold to help cover the restitution payments. But the real victory came when Agent Wilson called with an update. Captain, We've identified 12 more victims at other bases. Your investigation broke open a network we didn't even know existed. We're looking at additional arrests within the week. I helped coordinate victim interviews and collection. Each soldier had a similar story. Deployed overseas, trusted a colleague with personal information, discovered fraudulent accounts months later. The pattern was always the same. Trust, access, exploitation. By the time the investigation concluded, 29 service members had been victimized across 9 military installations. Total financial damage exceeded $1.2 million. But every account was closed. Every fraudulent debt was removed. Every victim's credit was restored. Justice had been served, but the betrayal still stung. 6 months later, I was back at Fort Campbell. The trial was over. The investigation was closed. Life had returned to something resembling normal. My credit score had recovered completely. The fraudulent accounts were gone from my reports like they'd never existed. The financial institutions had been thorough in their cleanup efforts. I'd been promoted to major and transferred to a new unit. Fresh start. Clean slate. But trust didn't come as easily anymore. I kept my personal documents in a locked safe now. Changed all my passwords monthly. Monitored my credit reports weekly instead of annually. The hypervigilance was exhausting, but necessary. Rodriguez had been transferred to Fort Bragg. We still texted occasionally. He'd helped 3 more soldiers discover identity theft in their units. The investigation had created a ripple effect across the military. People were more careful now. More suspicious. Maybe that wasn't entirely bad. Agent Wilson called last month with final updates. The network investigation had expanded to include civilian accomplices. 14 total arrests. Multiple convictions. The task force was being recognized for breaking up one of the largest military identity theft rings in recent history. Delacroix was serving his sentence at the U.S. disciplinary barracks in Fort Leavenworth. I'd received one letter from him, an apology. I never responded. Some betrayals couldn't be forgiven, only survived. On weekends, I volunteer at a veterans legal clinic for identity theft victims. The stories are always similar. Trust exploited, lives disrupted, financial chaos. But we help them navigate the system, file the reports, contact the institutions, restore their credit, fight back. Last Saturday, a young Marine came in. His story sounded familiar. Deployed to Afghanistan, trusted his squad leader with emergency contact information. Came home to discover $50,000 in fraudulent credit card debt. I walked him through the process, explained his rights, helped him file the initial reports. Watching his relief when he realized the debt wasn't his responsibility reminded me why this work mattered. The betrayals would continue. There would always be someone willing to exploit trust for personal gain. But there would also be people willing to fight back, to help victims navigate the system, to ensure justice was served. I drove home that evening through the quiet Kentucky countryside. The sun was setting behind the trees. The base was peaceful in the distance. My phone buzzed with a credit monitoring alert. For a split second, the old anxiety returned. But it was just my monthly rent payment. Legitimate, expected, normal. I deleted the notification and kept driving. The paranoia was fading slowly. The hypervigilance was becoming routine caution. The betrayal was becoming just another part of my story. Not the defining part, just one in a longer narrative. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment. The house was dark, quiet. Mine. No fraudulent mortgages, no unauthorized co-signers, no hidden debts. Just silence and peace and the knowledge that justice had been served. It was finally over, and the silence felt earned.